Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Odin's movie blog. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope we're doing well, and today we'll be talking about this bit of news that several channels have been covering, and that is a question mark. Is Margot Robbie's Birds of Prey in financial trouble at the box office, or is it doing very well? Now, if you want a really great breakdown of some of the articles on this, and also a lot of really great insight, I recommend checking out Ryan RK Outpost channel. He had a great video, and he made probably one of the best points that I've seen made on this specific topic, because there's been articles that have been coming out recently also claiming that this movie is outpacing other films like Wonder Woman, for example, and he made up the great point by saying that that is coming specifically from Adam Tickets, and that is without people recognizing the fact that when Wonder Woman came out originally, Adam Tickets was still relatively new. It was not as widely used as it is today. So to say, oh, Birds of Prey is outpacing Wonder Woman on Adam Tickets is kind of misleading and kind of giving you false information, because yeah, that might actually be factually true that the movie is outpacing it, but when you take into account that many people were not using Adam Tickets and it had only been around for about a year or so when the first Wonder Woman film came out, it kind of makes the entire thing completely worthless and pointless. It's interesting that they're using those movies that came out right around the time Adam Tickets first came out in comparison, and not movies that are a little bit closer to release, like, for example, Endgame or other films like that, which would be a little bit more accurate. I think Suicide Squad was the other film that they decided to put up here. Now, does that mean that the film is going to do well or that it's going to flop? The big answer that I have to all of this is that we honestly do not know. That the one thing that this report does, again, done very well at our friends over at Bounding the Comics, is they show a lot of these images up here, and you're gonna see a lot of people cover this, saying, look at all of these images of all of these seats. Look at how there are so many empty seats still available. And the reason why I always avoid that type of reporting and avoid that type of, or rather using that type of information saying, look, I have proof, is because it does not take into account every single theater in the country. One, many theaters in the country likely have situations and likely have shows that have done very well, are sold out, are close to sold out, are selling very well. Every market for the box office is very different. Some people are more drawn, some areas are more drawn to certain types of films than others. And so you're always going to see that type of discrepancy where you have some theaters that do very well and some theaters that do very poor. Another key indication, or another key point to make, is that not every theater has reserved seating, which means that you can't track every single theater in the entire country. So what does that mean for what the film is likely going to make? Well, the thing that I like to go to as far as predicting what a film likely is going to do are long-range tracking sites like BoxOfficePro.com, which at this point in time has the opening weekend somewhere between $40 and $60 million, with an opening core forecast of around $49 million, and they're forecasting that the overall domestic total will be around $135 million for Warner Brothers, which when you compare it to films like Joker, which was the last major comic book film to come out from Warner Brothers, is just absolutely nothing, about half of the opening weekend forecast, and not even getting close to the amounts of money that Joker made in both the domestic and the worldwide box office total, as I'm starting to lose my voice. But I looked at sites like this because sites like this don't just track ticket sales, pre-ticket sales. They don't just say, oh, Adam is reporting records, and so we're just going to assume that they're reporting records. Instead, sites like this tend to look to the actual number of tickets sold or projected number of tickets sold. They look at social media interactions. They look at all that kind of stuff, and that is where they get their opening forecast from, which is why there is a tracking range, because it could very well be much lower and it could be much higher. And they always make it clear, or at least I try and make it clear, that the number could definitely fall in underneath $40 million, but could also do better than the $60 million range there. This is just the most likely number based off of pre-sales and based off of the information that we have in front of us. I do not trust images like this. I know, because we've had a situation before where we had people posting images of theaters saying, oh, look, Disney's buying tickets. when all they were showing were certain theaters with certain seats sold, and it's something that was very easily debunked by saying, yeah, that's something that a lot of theaters sometimes do, is say we're holding off these rows because this film is expected to do pretty well, and so therefore we want to make sure that these seats are available if they need to be. They're blacked out not because they're sold, not because there's an actual ticket, but because we are trying to hold off that extra space just in case. In the same way here, seeing a bunch of random people post pictures of their own local theaters with the film not doing so well is not proof enough to me. And remember, I'm someone that I like to try and always keep myself in the facts. That's why I love numbers, because numbers don't care about your feelings. Numbers are always very straightforward. And so even though someone could argue saying, yeah, but aren't these also straightforward? They would be if it was inclusive of every single theater in the country, every single theater in the domestic marketplace, but it is not. It is just a handful of theaters, some of them in very large markets, and I would say that those images are definitely worth talking about. But then there's a lot of other theaters that are in smaller or medium markets, and it also is not including certain theaters in certain markets where it will do very well. Not to mention that because not everyone is into the buying the tickets weeks or days before a movie comes out, and many people still to this day will buy their tickets on the day of the show because they want to find out how many seats are going to be available, where they can sit, etc., then that is also not taking into account the fact that there will indeed be more tickets sold before the show time actually starts. So what does that mean for me? Do I think that these movies are going to be relatively not sold out? Well, seeing that this is not performing like an Endgame, not performing like another Marvel film that tends to sell a lot of pre-sold tickets in advance and have little room all the way up to the night before where you have those sold out shows, does not mean that this film is not going to do well financially. There have been cases of films being able to do well. In fact, I would say that it's actually more typical of a DC film to have people show up on the day than Marvel films where you have a lot of people buy them in advance. And one of the big reasons for that is because the Disney machine is so crazy with producing and promoting their films, so much more so than Warner Brothers does with their DC films. That is why and how they're able to push people to seats. Now, I don't want anyone who's a DC fan to go after me for saying anything positive about Marvel, because I am very critical of the current state of Marvel and, of course, the current state of Disney. I do just want to point out that fact that you have on one hand the Disney machine pushing things on one hand, and on the other, Warner Brothers, which is responsible for multiple properties and doesn't really, I think, give DC the amount of attention that they definitely deserve. That has been made very clear by the very fact that you have this movie being pushed out with an obvious political message. You just had the other day Ewan McGregor doing yet another interview doubling down on the fact that he is happy to be a part of this film right here as it tackles issues on so-called misogyny. It's messages like that, it's interviews like that, it's marketing like the one that we're getting from the most recent trailer, the hair tie clip. If you have not seen the hair tie clip, it has some of the worst choreography I have ever seen in a movie. And I'm not just saying that for the sake of saying that, I'm saying that because it's true. There have been many people who have done breakdowns of it where at one point you have Huntress who is supposed to be punching someone where her punches don't even come close to hitting. They don't cut away from it either. Literally, you get to see her not punch someone, and then as soon as she walks away, the dude literally sits up because he's about to be in the way of the camera. It's that kind of stuff that makes you frustrated, especially since a lot of the stunt team that worked on this film are the same stunt team that worked on a great film and a great franchise like John Wick and John Wick 2 and John Wick 3. I think Chad Stahelski was the one that actually started that stunt team or stunt group because of the John Wick film. So he had some involvement with choreographing some of those scenes. It makes me wonder, did he have anything to do with that scene, or was that all of the female director, female writer, etc., or was it something else? Now, some people might say, why did you mention the gender of the people? Because that is what they are pushing here. They're pushing the fact that, oh my gosh, this is a female-led production. There's a female writer, a female director, a female cast, female power, whammon, whammon, whammon. And guess what? If you keep trying to push that message, I'm going to continue to ask the same question. Who is this movie for? If this movie is just for women, make that more clear. Say, hey, this is just meant for women, because guess what? That's pretty much what you're doing already, and by doing that, you're isolating more than half of the audience that was going to or was thinking of going to see your film in the first place. And when you're basically isolating and pushing away over half of your audience, of which many of which are going to choose to not go see this movie, not going to go see a film to get preached to about their misogyny and about their sexism and about all of these things that are hidden, their microaggressions and all this nonsense that they're teaching in college nowadays. They're just not going to go see it. And so that's why I think that there are cases where you're going to see some of these films, some of these places like in Vegas, like in Brooklyn, like in certain parts of Mexico, having empty theaters, while there are still going to be some theaters that do pretty well. So what is this all to say? Basically, Birds of Prey is set to, at this point in time, based off of the tracking and based on what we're seeing, to be a decent release. Nothing special, nothing great. The question that I have is, how much exactly will it make opening weekend? Will it hit that $49 million average? Will it get closer to 60? Some are speculating that it could get around $55 million. I've heard some sites report that, while others have it more close to the $45 to $49 million range. So how much will it make opening weekend? And of course, the number one question that I always have, what kind of drop-off will we see week 1 to week 2? All of the critics have been already praising this film for a wide variety of reasons. When you have a film that has an actor coming out to say this is political, and it's great that it's political, and then you have the political critics going out of their way to say this movie is fantastic and you should go see it, and even people like Grace Randolph saying in her review that she did not like the film, that she had issues with the film, but she's going to give it a fresh rating just because other people liked it. That goes and shows you that the Access media are totally on board of this film. Whenever the Access media are on board any film for that matter, it always gives me time to take a pause and to ask questions. Now, I know there's a lot of DC fans that watch this channel and watch the videos that I make. I ask that you please don't go off on DC tangents in the comment section. If you have a valid point about the box office or something that I may have missed, I am glad to hear you. But if your main comment or your starting point is going to be, I just want DC films to do well, that's not a good enough reason to be able to defend the nonsense that Ewan McGregor has said, and also the reality of the situation that this film is not at this point set to be a giant blockbuster juggernaut. And based on how much or how little it makes, could either be a small success or could also be a small failure. That's where I think it is right now. I think that at the best it can do, it'll make a few $1 million. At the worst case scenario, for me at least, predicting-wise, it'll be a small loss. Either small success, small loss. But let me know your thoughts. Do you think that these images that we're getting are indeed reflective of what the film's actually going to do? Do you think that the film is not selling any tickets? Again, a lot of these people say they have sources claiming that in the big markets like Los Angeles, again, Matt McGloin over on Cosmic News says he had a source saying that the movie's just not selling any tickets. And he has, of course, some pictures of some of the theaters. This is not taking into account, of course, if anyone's going to show up on the actual night, or other theaters in the area or other theaters in the region, especially theaters that don't actually have reserved seating so that you can't actually look it up online to see how many tickets have actually been sold. So what do you think? Do you think that there are going to be a lot of empty seats opening night? Do you think that it's going to be a big box office bust? Again, based on the long-range tracking for this one, Birds of Prey is set to have 4,100 screens, which means that if it does fall underneath the $40 million range, that's going to be a terrible per theater gain. And that means we'll likely see this film, especially after the second and third weekend, drop out of a lot of theaters. But we still have yet to see the film. We have yet to see the film. We have yet to see what kind of impact this is going to have. But again, I ask that question. Who is this for? It's obviously not for comic book fans, because I've heard so many fans of the comics say, who are these characters? They can't even tell who these characters are supposed to be. And it seems like the director and writer had no idea who they were trying to write for either. So it asks the question, is it for comic book fans? Apparently not, because apparently this character right here, who I know very little about because I am not a comic book fan, is supposed to be a badass martial artist. And yet she's hiding and not engaging in any fights whatsoever throughout all of the scenes that we've been shown from the film so far. In fact, in that one scene with the hair tie, she's cowering, not actually having any fights whatsoever. All the other characters, too, apparently do not look that way. And someone made a very good point to say, it looks to me like they're trying to get every little bit of representation they possibly can in this film. And when you look into the cast and then you look to the reports that apparently Huntress is going to not be considered a white character, but from another part of the world, it seems that that is likely going to end up being true as well, that they cared more about getting diversity points with this film than they did with actually telling a good, compelling story. When we have people like Ewan McGregor to be believed that this film is all about misogyny and fighting against misogyny and wokeness, doesn't look like it's going to end up being very good or doing well at the box office. So anyway, I wanted to put my thoughts out there on that because, again, I don't really trust these images right here. I don't put a lot of stock in them because this is only a small sample of theaters, and it does not take into account all theaters where it could be doing much better. I know that one of my friends, I think it was Gary pointed out that the Dolby showing, or maybe it was, it was Ryan. It was RK Outpost once again. He showed the Dolby showing of one of his theaters. The opening Dolby showing was almost sold out, which makes a lot of sense to me because a lot of people like to see those Dolby showings when they first are, the first showings of them. But yeah, I have no interest in seeing this film because the trailer just does not look compelling. Even before all this news was coming out about Ewan McGregor, I had no interest in seeing it because of the fact that I don't know these characters other than Harley Quinn, because I'm not a comic book fan, and so I, again, don't really know who this is for. And after hearing comic book fans take on these characters and how they don't look anything like the comic characters themselves, it makes me ask the question, well then, who is this for? And if you look to people like Ewan McGregor and all the other things that are going on with the obvious woke casting of the film, seems to me very clear that this is going to be made for a more political-minded audience, and that don't sell in Hollywood. When you really look down to it, audiences don't support that trash. So anyway, let me know your thoughts about this and all the things we talked about in the comment section below. Like this video, smash the like button, give me a subscribe, it helps me out a lot. You're all amazing, beautiful people. Also, make sure that you vote for the Wednesday Raven Awards, which will be this coming Sunday. The voting will be closed Saturday night. So please check the description for a link for your ballot where you can indeed vote for the best films of the year, the worst films of the year, the NPC, the shill of the year, the most woke piece of garbage, the most critically acclaimed piece of garbage film of 2019, and so many other really awesome categories as well. Please make sure you check that out. Get your vote in because voting will indeed close on Saturday. You guys are freaking amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful day. And as always, God bless. And now to give a shout out to my February Patreon and Subscribe Star members: Animation Commentator, Brian P., Dion, David Brobrizik. Please let me know if I need to repronounce that name. DivX, Elizabeth M., Enrique Evangelista, Father Christopher Miller, Frank the Tank and the Shawhan Weird Dog Clan, Harold Francis, The Hunky Chunky Funky Monkey, Inflamed Wood, Interdrap Productions, Jason Clark, Jeffrey Toon, Jeffrey Lebowski, JJ Jonathan Jerembeck, Kenneth Cameo, Lady T, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mr. Peabody and his evil twin with the beautiful hair, Orange Hat Reviews, Outpost Dyer, Perpetual Punster, Riff Magos, Rosetta Allen, Steve Glasker, Teresa Martin, Theodore Bendon, The DJD Show, and Tina B. And over on Subscribestar, Robert Revo, Larry, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, G2 Cool 99, Darkstar 57, Alice McCarthy, US 888-209 Fast, Dean Heiss, Hild Francis, J-Rod the Beer Guru, Nebanon G. Adams, and ZK Man. Thank you very much for being my Patreon Subscribestar members for the month of February. And if anyone else decides to join, at the next couple of days or so, I will add you into this list as well. You guys freaking rock. Have a wonderful one. And as always, God bless.